Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Prodigal Son. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we're dealing with the aftermath of the episode where, Malcolm is still dealing with, the fallout, like I said, of last episode. And obviously, Jessica is getting, obviously, there's an investigation and stuff like that. So that's the only reason why charges haven't been brought up against her. But despite the circumstances, she's not going to, because Gil is like, you need to get you a lawyer because things could go sideways. Especially because it turns out the carousel killer from last episode, he's not corroborating the fact is that he pushed Jessica to stab Martin. So meaning if Martin dies, she's going down for murder. And the reason why he's doing that is because he wants to give a middle finger. Despite everything that Malcolm said to him last episode, he's so adamant about taking down Martin and kind of making he kind of wants to make that entire family suffer for his loss. So I think that's what it is. It's kind of like a middle finger of like, well, you did what was necessary, so you should be happy with the fact of the matter is you took down a very bad guy. This is what you wanted to do the entire time anyway. So, and now, Malcolm's got that whole situation running through his mind because he's like, I should be the one taking responsibility for. The fact is, I'm the one who did it. But for Jessica, it's like, but I'm your mom. Let me be your mom. Let me protect you. Because for her, it's like, I have the position and the resources to make sure I can, get away from this whole situation. And it's like, oh, you got a case, Malcolm? Go solve a murder, just to kind of give him a distraction from it. Idris is actually the one that got to call them into this case because there was actually some other department that was taking the case, but she pushed for them to take it because she's like, oh, she figured they'd really like it and it's like, oh, look at this case. And it was really creepy because the victim Kevin was just sitting there his arm out and everything, and it seems like, all right, what the hell is up with this scene? And it's like, oh, because he looks like he's so alive, the whole scene was so preserved, and it freaked JT out. And it's like, she's like, it's an interesting case, isn't it? And Malcolm was like, it is. Thanks, Idrissa. And she looks at me, you're welcome, Malcolm. But the fact of the matter is that basically Kevin was embalmed, and he looks so perfect. They got makeup on him, not just to covering the wound that killed him, but also his skin, blended it so it matched his complexion, healed anything, covered up any pimples and stuff like that. And it's such a twisted scene that Malcolm is kind of suggesting that this might be a necrophiliac. I love it. And JT and Gil were both like, oh, don't go there. And he says that. They're like, oh, you said it. And he's like, but there's different levels. There's different types of necrophiliacs. It isn't always sexual. But basically he ends up talking about, but the fact of the matter is it's the whole, getting close to a corpse and everything. It's it's something everyone can understand. And Gil's like, wait, are you okay? And JT and Danny are looking like, wait, what? And he kind of explains it, yes, it's weird, but you can understand it to a certain extent. It's the fact of the matter is to have, basically it compensates for a connection that they don't really have with people. So it's a thing of okay, I need to, they're kind of compensating for not having that connection. And, even Malcolm be like, don't we all kind of want some connection? Isn't that nice? Despite the circumstances. And he was like, yeah, and the murder. And, JT was like, and the murder. And Malcolm's like, that goes without saying. JT's like, just checking. So that's a whole situation. And so I even love, Malcolm and Idrissa geeking out about the history of embalming and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you want to give this person credit? Yeah, but we should give this person credit. Well, no, we should go back to the Egyptians and stuff like that. Oh, we can really get into it, but Gil kind of shuts that down quick. It's like, oh, come on, Gil. They were about to have their nerdy conversation about embalming, and you kind of ruined it. But also, it turns out there's a funeral directors convention, which I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. There's conventions about everything, pretty much any, I think, business you can think of. There's pretty much a con about it. But it's just weird to know there's a convention for funeral directors. I even love that whole thing of what was it that I think it was JT was how many morticians does it take to screw in a light bulb? And what was it? Malcolm was saying oh, they prefer funeral directors is kind of the new name. And Idrissa was like, no, or they like this other name too. And JT is like, you both suck at jokes. I love that whole situation. But obviously it's they've got two potential suspects. What's the word I'm looking for? Suspects. One being this dude named Dev and the other being Tilda, who will both have a connection to the victim Kevin, which the actress who plays Tilda, her name is Anna Gasteyer. I think I'm probably butchering her last name. I'm sorry. I had to look into her IMDb. She's one of those actors, like, I've seen her pop up in stuff. I don't know what it is that I recognize her the most from, but I've seen her in different stuff. I just can't remember what. But nevertheless, obviously, like, Malcolm's kind of going through this whole thing of, like, all right, because of obviously the thing with his dad, and obviously Danny's trying to get him to talk about it, you know, and she wants to talk to him about it, but obviously for him, he's kind of pushing her away, which I did love that moment where Danny's like, do you think I like talking about this whole situation? We're literally in a place like this. There's a coffin literally designed like the one my dad died in. I lost my dad when I was 16, so this isn't the easiest thing for me to talk about, but you wanted to be friends, and that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to be a friend, you know? And because, you know, it's just because of what because like I said, Malcolm's dealing with not only the whole situation of your dad potentially dying, you're kind of responsible, you are responsible for it. Because even like the whole situation of, you know, Ainsley kind of got him back at the hospital, and she's like, you know, dads could die and like you haven't seen him and everything. And it's like, well, Malcolm was like, well, it was to save their mom's life and also stop a killer. And he thought, hey, I could stab him in the heart and he would survive. It's like, you thought stabbing him, he'd survive. It's like, it's a long story. Because that would have to go through a lot of back explanation of like, yeah, actually, it's something dad actually taught me like a couple years back. You know, that would have been a whole complicated conversation in itself. But nevertheless, and it's like, yeah, you can't avoid him forever, so you haven't been inside to see him. So like all that's kind of rattling Malcolm, and all those coffins just makes him think about like, oh, his dad's own death door, because it's the complicated thing of like his dad's a serial killer, so it's like I shouldn't feel bad about him dying, but I do, because despite everything, that's still your dad. I mean, I think a lot of people sadly have those situations of like, you know, sadly, even though despite what some atrocities some people might commit, it's like that's still my baby. So that's the complicated like situation in that manner. So while all that's, you know, going down, they end up talking to Tilda and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, she doesn't get too emotional because she's like, oh, they kind of teach us this in like funeral direct, like morgue school, essentially morgue school, that basically not to get emotional around families because you have to kind of keep your own composure. So she's not letting anything slide. So it's like, all right. And so nevertheless, Adrisa ends up stealing some, because I figured she did it on purpose. Like, there was like, she was knocking some stuff down. She's like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. But I was like, oh, you did it on purpose to grab some stuff. And of her being like, see, you won't guess who the makeup that was found on Kevin matches whose stuff. And it's like, she's like, and she speaks up a little, she's like, Dev, if that wasn't clear. So it's like, okay, he looks like the suspect. They end up going there, but sadly, he's not the killer. In fact, he's the next victim. So it turns into a situation where, like, okay, we got to save him because, like, basically there's, like, antifreeze in his system, and it's going to slowly shut down his... I even love Adrisa, like, wipe the glass, and she puts her... And then Gil's looking at her like, what are you doing? And she's like, right, I shouldn't have done that, right? But obviously, like, you know, Malcolm is saying that because she's a trained medical professional, like, she can do this. But she's like, no, I work on corpses. But Malcolm's like, you have experience with all of this, so you can do this, like, you know, just, you know, save lives this time. And obviously, it kind of was like, it came out as like a backhanded compliment, because I think because of everything he's going through, but also just in this moment. And so Adrisa was, at the end of the day, able to kind of save the day, able to save Dev's life, you know, because it's like Malcolm being like, all right, if you think all right, pretend like there's no time on the clock, and that instead of worrying about saving someone's life, that you're actually working on a corpse to kind of make her calm down about the whole situation. But then there's the whole situation where they end up bringing Tilda in later on, but like Malcolm's like, you didn't do it, because for him, you know, and so I don't believe you did it. And she's like, wait, you don't? And then Gilman like, wait, we don't? It's like, because she's so okay with moving past like the complicated situation between her, Dev, and Kevin, that basically they lost their business, lost a lot of money. Like, she's not caught up in the past. She's actually doing better now, but she's protecting, what was the woman's name? What was it? Lillian? Basically, she was a silent partner. She was actually the one who did the embalming. Like, she basically was the one that kind of got close to the corpses and stuff like that. And she kind of, there was a mishap, and basically some chemicals ran longer, and they ended up burning all the corpses. Because she is a necrophiliac that she is, she builds a connection with these corpses. And so when all those bodies burned, it sat with her, because it was almost like your friends. Basically, it's like these people you're connected to, these friends. It's not just about the business. It wasn't just a business. Like, it filled a hole in her heart. And losing all that, and she was trying to meet up with the other three to kind of like remedied that, but they weren't willing to reach out to her, and they just kind of wanted to leave it all behind, and that kind of pushed her to kind of go to the extremes that she did. Then, like, obviously Malcolm was trying to call Idrissa to kind of make up with her, but then, you know, Idrissa was like, no, I don't want to talk right now, and Malcolm's like, yeah, but Idrissa's kind of weird. It's like, what is, and Danny being like, what's weird for Idrissa? And it's like, she didn't want to talk to me. Danny's like, she didn't want to talk to you? And Malcolm's like, yeah. It's like, we know Idrissa would do anything to talk, you know, to Malcolm. So it's like, all right, so something's definitely up. And Malcolm goes to check on her, and the lady is holding her hostage because she wants Kevin's body. It is an interesting situation because, like, Malcolm's like, no, just give her the body. It doesn't matter. But for Idrissa, it's like, it does matter. Like, this whole death situation matters. Like, for her, it's like, I'm kind of there, like, to kind of take care of these people, to make, you know, kind of help them, like, after everything's happened. Like, as a mortician, like, she does kind of, like, she plays her own role in all of this, and like there is kind of a connection like that. I think Idrissa doesn't have the necrophilia. I mean, not less the argument could it basically, well, because obviously for her, I think living people, like people isn't the easiest thing for her, but dead people kind of are. And it's like, but now that's why I'm kind of wondering, are they kind of setting up that fact is that she's kind of necrophiliac, not in a sexual sense, but in a sense of like maybe she's one of the other, like one of the other 9 types or whatever. Maybe that's what they are. Maybe just purely just being like, she's just a very, like, it's hard to connect with, you know, living people. So dead people, like I said, she plays a role in kind of like, you know, that whole process and everything. So it's like for her, like she's looking out for doing what's best for them, and it's like you coming here wanting Kevin's body, you're not kind of letting him rest, you're kind of dishonoring him, you know. And the sad situation is we kind of learned that this doesn't just go back to the business burning all those years ago. What this is a byproduct of is because when she was 6, she climbed into bed with her mom who had died, and she was with her for like 12 hours, and a cold body, you know, for 12 hours, you know what that feels like. And that's why she warms up, like that's why she brings more warmth to these bodies, because she knows what it's like to lay next to a corpse. That obviously is that's going to mess you up, which obviously Malcolm with the whole situation can also relate, because it's like, he's like, I get it, like the whole, you know, connections thing, it's not the easiest thing to kind of form connections with living people. And the fact of the matter is, he was actually kind of reaching out to her, and it seemed like Idrissa was kind of going along with it. And he was like, okay, so how about we just kind of deal with this together? Idrissa grabs the pan, knocks the gun out of her hand, and Malcolm grabs it. He's like, what were you doing? She's like, yeah, you were saying, like, you know, sometimes you have to take risks and everything, right? You were talking to me, right? And he was like, yeah, totally. I was talking to you. It's like, so like it was a very therapeutic session for him. So when he was reaching out to her, he was kind of reaching out to himself. But Idrissa was like, oh no, you were talking to me. You were telling me to kind of take the moment and go for it. But it's like Idrissa ended up kind of basically saving the day. And I love JT walking beside her after arresting the lady and being like, I see you. So it's like, that was pretty badass. But I also love the fact is that, you know, Malcolm ended up talking to Danny and apologizing to her, because it's like, yeah, because of what I did, I ended up, you know, pushing you away and stuff like that. And it's like, thank you for, it's like, yeah, this whole thing, she's like, of course you'd be the only person that get a therapeutic byproduct of talking with a killer. But I like that. That also makes me wonder, because obviously Danny, like, Malcolm doesn't just like, I think it's not just a friend situation, but once again, he doesn't want to compromise it, because Danny's like the first real friend he's had in a long time, if, you know, very, very long time. So he doesn't want to jeopardize that with the fact is because he obviously super likes her. And I think it's because obviously Danny deeply cares about Malcolm, because that's why she's, you know, because Gil was like, yo, so how's our boy? She's like, I don't know. But he's just like, just keep an eye on our boy. And it's like, yeah, like obviously she cares about Malcolm just as much as, you know, Gil does. So I think that's kind of a beautiful element to this whole situation. Then there's the whole thing with Jessica, who Jessica's got this situation, like obviously she's like, oh, should I talk to my, because that lawyer Sterling, because she referred on her phone, he's saved as the devil, and I was like, well, what's that all about? He's the lawyer that represented Martin. And it's like, yeah, you wouldn't want to probably have that connection, but the sad thing is, it's like, well, under her circumstances, she kind of needs a cutthroat lawyer, and it's like, and he's basically going Saul Goodman, being like, oh, you don't need the best of the best, you need the worst of the worst, being like, oh, you need someone that can cut some corners and stuff like that, because he's the one that basically got it so that instead of going to like a full-blown prison, Rikers, even getting the electric chair, that Martin has a kind of cushy position that he's in a mental facility, that he kind of has the amenities that he does, the privileges he does, is because he kind of swung that. So obviously, you know, Jessica has a complicated thing of like, oh, you can get the charges dropped, but it's at the same time, it's like, I don't want to be represented by the scumbag who it's like, if it literally wasn't for you representing Martin, I wouldn't be in a situation that I'm in. And obviously, Ainsley had kind of brought this up to her mom, but it did end up being like this very like cathartic moment between Ainsley and Jessica, because Jessica's like, would you actually feel bad about your dad if he died? Like, she's like, I'm not here to judge or anything. I'm legitimately just curious. So, and obviously it's a very complicated, like the entire family has a complicated, you know, response to it. Like each one of them does affect them differently on like, if he ended up dying, because it's like, yeah, he's a serial killer and everything, but it is still the thing of dad is your dad. And even it's like, oh, what about you? You know, Ainsley kind of turns it back on Jessica. Jessica's like, well, it's like, you know, yeah, the world would be better off without him, but, and then Ainsley's like, you're still in love with him. She's almost like, what? God, no. I was like, she's like, oh God, she's like, I needed a good laugh. I haven't laughed like that in a long time. She's like, no, but she brings up the point is, if he's alive, she knows exactly where he is, and he's always locked up in that facility, but if he's dead, she's scared that she's going to be haunted by him. She's already kind of haunted already, but even more so that like, she feels like there'd be no escape in that regard. But it's like, maybe I should take up on Sterling up on that offer. But Ainsley was like, no, the point was, you now know I showed you what lawyer, obviously you now see that's a lawyer you don't want. Now go find a lawyer you do want. So I thought that was, and she was like, oh, that's pretty like tricky and deceit, like diabolical of you. She's like, I learned from the best. It's like, oh, damn, that's like very touching moment. So Jessica turns to who else? But isn't her name Eve? Which is interesting. But there was this whole situation of, you know, Jessica turning to like the one person she figured she could turn to that, you know, obviously Eve has, you know, lawyer experience and stuff like that. And Eve being like, the fact of the matter is, I know your son, he's troubled, but at the core, you know, which, you know, obviously she doesn't get into it, but Jessica's like, he saw some very terrible stuff when he was younger and it's kind of haunted him. But and Eve is like, despite all that, I see it heart of it all. Your son's a good man, so I'm glad to help. And I'm like, okay, so she gets a lawyer. We're going to circle back to this because I got some thoughts about some things. But nevertheless, another interesting angle to this, and this was the whole thing that got brought up at the beginning of the episode between Danny and Malcolm. It's like, well, the fact of the matter is coma patients don't dream, but they do hallucinate. And it's like, what kind of, you know, kind of having nightmares, and it's like, what kind of nightmares does a serial killer have? And then we see like, oh, like he's walking and he's kind of basically reliving the moment of that victim we never found out who she is, like the bracelet, the gold bracelet and everything. It's like, oh, so this is it. I'm like, so why are you having a nightmare about it? Because it looks like you're literally reliving the moment. The sad thing is, like, after he knocked her, like took her back to his place, oh, you can call for, you know, oh, blah blah blah, chloroforms, or sadly, Jessica shows up in time. He kind of puts her away and then like kind of starts necking on her and stuff like that, kissing on her neck. And then it's like, she's like, oh, what's gotten into you? It's like, oh, that's, so do you actually get some sexual pleasure out of this type of situation? Maybe he does. I don't know. But then, like, the nightmare, well, turns into a nightmare, and he's over there with the body. He opens the box, but it's like her body's not there, and he goes back, and she's answering a call and everything. It's like, oh, he's like, no, this isn't how it went down. It's just like, oh, Dr. Whitley's been treating me nice, and it's like, wait, what's going on here? And she's like, oh, and she pulls out a knife and starts stabbing him all over the place. I'm like, ooh. And she's like, the fact of the matter is, I'm going to basically hurt your entire family. It's like he starts piecing it together like, oh, I'm in a coma. This is my subconscious. You're just a figment of it. You're kind of an amalgamation of everything, of all my victims or something like that. But she's like, you know who I am. And she wants to make him suffer, so proceeds to threaten to kill Malcolm. And I love it. And she's like, you know, I ask one thing. Why'd you do what you did? And he was like, because I wanted to. He's like, I can only guess every other thing. It's like, maybe because my mom loved me too little. Maybe she loved me too much. Maybe because my dad did things. I'm like, yo, what the hell is that about? We haven't really trailed back on, like, you know, I mean, that was him kind of being like psychoanalyzing himself, maybe he himself doesn't have answers. To him, it's like, all these are potential reasons, but maybe there's not just one core reason. Maybe it's an amalgamation of all these different things that led to him becoming what he is. But I love that whole situation. It's actually sad, but it's like, oh, he's like, you know who I am, and it's like, and Malcolm's smiling, kid Malcolm's smiling, like, you're a predator, and like, the fact of the matter is, it's like, and you know, the fact of the matter is, you always feel like you're in control, and he's like, yeah, this is all in my mind, and because I am always in control, and Malcolm disappears, and Martin ends up getting the knife, and she's like, what are you going to do? And he's like, I'm going to go back to my family. Wakes up, Malcolm's there looking over him, and he's like, my boy. Now, with that in mind, the fact is, it's like, oh, I won't lie to you. The moment I saw Eve, this is where my mind went. She's the daughter of that victim. That's what this is all about. I think she was trying to get close to the family, try to see, like, who they were, like, what they were about. Like, well, because the thing is, I take that back, because she didn't know about her mom. They didn't, because obviously at that time, everyone thought that other victim was just part of Malcolm's mind. But remember, Jessica went on TV and was like, there's this unknown victim, showed the bracelet and everything. The moment Eve saw that, she was like, my mom was one of those victims. So that's why that whole line about, like, I recognize that, you know, Malcolm is a good person. And the whole thing about, like, all that, like, somewhere on his subconscious, like, Martin was kind of piecing that together, and she's being like, oh, you know who I am. So either Eve visited him while he was in the hospital or something, kind of snuck in and did that. I don't know. But I think that's what the twist is going to be. I think that's who Eve is. I think Eve is the daughter of that victim, and she never knew whatever happened to her mom, but now she does, and I think she's going to, like, destroy this family. Like, she's going to act like she's helping Jessica, but secretly from the inside, she's going to dismantle this family, potentially get close to Malcolm again, just to kind of make him suffer, to make them suffer. Maybe she's going to try and help out, because, like, she does feel bad for Malcolm, but it's still like, you're still kind of part of this. Maybe, I don't know, but that's where I think this is going. I could be wrong, but I'm sticking with this theory. Eve has got to be the daughter of that unnamed victim. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see if that ends up being the case or not. We will be waiting a little while for the next episode, because Prodigal Son is taking about roughly, 3 weeks, but basically a month off, and it will be returning on March 16th. So do keep that in mind. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.